Lord, 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 Lord. Lord, Lord, yeah.
And we are live. Good morning again, everyone. Welcome to the ladies' room, the Spicemas edition, day 2. Started off yesterday with our current chair of the Spicemas Corporation and our CEO, and of course, Ali Gill. And boy, what a wonderful conversation we had. And we're definitely looking forward to having an even better one today because we're talking Steelpan, right? So that was yesterday. And this morning it's all about Steelpan. We have in our company Jennifer Woodruff and of course Michael Archibald. And they're definitely here to talk about Pan, the evolution of Pan, where we are currently, and just about all things Pan. So come on onto the live quickly, and as soon as you get in the room, just hit the share button so we can spread the love and of course spread the information and vibes we've got going on. And once again, special thank you to our kind sponsors for making this possible this morning. Thank you to our friends at Sissons Paint. Thank you so much, Ariza Credit Union, Western Union, Beacon Insurance, and Georgia Huggins and Company Limited for making today's Ladies Room, the Spicemas edition, possible. So again, welcome. Good to have you guys here. And without further ado, we're going to jump right on into it and introduce our guest to you this morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to Power 95. How are we doing today?
Fine so far.
Happy to be here. Happy to be here.
Listen, Ms. Woodruff, we want you to get comfortable, right? Because I was told by someone, listen, you got Jennifer Woodruff in studio to talk. Yes, we did. So we're looking forward to having a really nice conversation. This lady's going to be really fantastic today. So I'm looking forward to that. All righty. So again, welcome everybody. It's so good of you to join us today. And like I said, we're talking about the Steelpan movement involvement in Grenada's Carnival. So before we get into that, we're going to ask our guests, of course, to share a little bit about themselves and their love of Pan and the whole involvement in all of this. And then we'll take it from there.
Well, I'll go first. Love Pan, I love Pan to death. But my main involvement and growing up was with Angel Harps. So there's a little bias there sometimes. Not when I was cheering. But it is, you look at it as the only art form that we can call ours. It was developed in the Caribbean and it's really our own and we have to keep it going. But I've loved it because I grew up with it in my backyard on the wharf.
On the wharf. I like that. Mr. Archibald, how about you?
Like Jenny said, I've been a Pan lover for as far back as I can remember. Really, really love the Steelpan movement. But I've also been the chairman of the Panorama or the Steel Band Committee of the Carnival Development Committee on a number of occasions. I've been involved in sponsorship of Steel Band now for Jenny, 30 years or more. So my heart is in the steel band movement. It has always been. And what a lot of people don't know, I actually played Pan for 1 year.
Well, we have something in common because I did the same thing with the Rainbow City All Stars out of Grenada. Let me tell you this. What I say to people, don't just look at Pan. I mean, it's the discipline that I got from it, but the sleepless nights, I mean, it's a lot. And you really have to commend, folks who do this every year, every day for years, because you have to have a love for it. And I mean, the time and the dedication, it took a lot out of us to, go to the Pan House every time, especially around the Carnival season. And, you want to go practice jab and practice for Juve, and you have to be in the Pan House. And, for sometimes we're there from 8 o'clock until 5 o'clock in the morning, and you have to get it right. So it's not just something that people look at, okay, folks just go there and making noise. It's not. You have to learn the notes. You have to learn the right one. And it's a lot of work. And I really commend folks who, stick it out. So I tried it for a year and I'm like, I like it, but I can't make it. So we're here this morning to talk about that. And of course, share your involvement, like I said, with the Steelpan. So you can share with us a bit of the history, because based on who you listen to, there seem to be a lot of different, things on it. You hear Trinidad and then you hear us and then you hear, but your personal experience. Can you share a bit of that with us?
Well, being involved in the administration part of Carnival, you sort of had an overall thing, not just Pan. But in the case of Pan, you find that the development started, then it stopped, then it slowed down, then you start up, you pick up again. And I think that it has to keep at a certain pace. But you see, when you get into the actual pan thing, you want to see them go a little further faster.
Mm-hmm.
But over the years, they've tried. We've gone into Panorama already with 10 bands. We've gone down to 5 and that sort of thing. But I still want to see it going. It must keep going. And that again depends on the youth. The youth have to carry it through. Because a lot of the pan people that we have playing now, unlike Trinidad, they have a lot of older people in their pan section. But with us, it's a lot of youth, school children. And the old people just step back. But in case of pan here, we have to see it, even if it's 1 foot at that one little step at a time. It always go forward. It must go forward.
So, Archibald?
Yeah, I think my concern is that we have not seen any real change or any real development over the last 20 years in steel band. The steel band movement has been very resilient. It's alive, it is resilient, and it continues to remain alive. But it is not changing. And everything else is changing around the steel band. Your demographics are changing. Your culture is changing. Everything, your technology is changing. The way in which we administer culture is changing. But as far as the steel band and steel band movement and the administration of steel band, there has been very, 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 very little change. And I think that is my biggest concern. We have to look at it differently. Part of it is the problem. Part of the problem is with the administration, but part of the problem is with the steel band people and players themselves. Now, they have had a lot of challenges over the years, a lot of challenges. And so they are mistrustful. They're not prepared to listen to people outside of steel band. And that is unfortunate because we have to change that attitude if we are going to move the steel band forward. One more comment. You talked about the impact on the young people, and I think we underestimate that, and we don't give the steel band movement enough credit for the impact it has on young people as far as teaching them teamwork, determination. There's a goal for Panorama, and let's work together into the middle of the night to get it. I think that has had a big impact on the young people of our country, and we don't give the steel band movement enough credit for that.
Now, there's lots more I want to ask in terms of some of the things you mentioned and the ways we can go about fixing or rectifying, because for years, as someone here is saying, they've played pan for years, and since they're small, they've lost count how many times they've heard the conversation about trying to improve it, but they've left years ago, and to them it's like the same thing, no changes there at all. So how do you talk it but still not changing or fixing some of the things that responsible for that? We're practically at a standstill. When you look at Panorama in Trinidad, and you see it's almost like a major part of Carnival. It's not like a stepchild that you include just because you're with the mother or you're with the father, but it's like you're a part of the family. It's not something on the side, and you can't help but notice like it almost be like an afterthought. We stick you in there and figure it out, and what happens. So how do we get past that?
It will take a joint it has to be a collaborated effort on both parts, the steel band organization as well as the Carnival and the government to a lesser extent, because you have to develop. You must develop. And just talking, like, the only time I have a conversation is at Carnival, and that's not good enough, because now we are only talking Panorama, and 90% of the time it's prize money. That's not what it is about. We have to start looking at pan tuners in Grenada. We have to start looking. I mean, my son happened to be playing pan in Philadelphia, and I went to the pan house maybe 3 times, and then he tells me, oh no, we don't practice that much. The sheet music is sent us by email or whatever.
You do it at home.
Yeah, and then we come into the changes are made, and they tell you everybody reads music. So you go in there, you don't spend as much time, and that is something I want to see us sort of lessen on, because you have kids sometimes doing exams, and they have to spend all this time in the panels. It's a great time, because you go down there and you eat, you drink,
You have a time.
and you listen to them, and you hear the arranger quarreling with them, and it's a whole big experience. But sometimes you could cut back on that by trying to get the kids involved in music. So you get the sheet music at home. You try, if you don't have a pan, borrow one from the same pan unit that you're working with. But we have to look at it more than just panorama. Years ago in Grenada, we had a steel band festival. It used to be held somewhere, I think, around October. It used to be in Regal. Now, I'm dating myself here, but that's okay.
That's okay.
But you had them playing classical music. You had tenor competitions, and it was a whole like 2 weeks of celebration. That is no more, no more. And it doesn't have to be annual. They can bring it back. It's one way of them making, looking after themselves also. Christmas time. There was one, both Angel Labs used to have a show. That doesn't exist anymore. They used to have a monthly thing going to every parish to play. That doesn't happen anymore. So whose fault is it at this point? We have to start bringing back the interest in pan. We used to laugh and say, "Oh, when they have panorama, we know 5 people that will be going, and 4 others, and 4 others, guaranteed. No matter what happens, they vex because they're not going to white in the moonlight because they have to come to pan, and they're vexed with white in the moonlight. Fine, but we have to have more people thinking that the pan is important. It is important. It has to stay here. We have to fight for it."
Because the thing is you apartment now is that with COVID and all of that, you got a couple of them in the hotels, but now that is practically not happening.
Yeah.
So where else? Onto your take.
Well, let me read for you something that Lincoln Deputy Torres said. He said, "If PAN is to move to a higher level, the governance and administration of the movement can no longer depend on a committee of volunteers, which is where all of us came in, that meets intermittently to discuss PAN-related matters. In his view, he's asking, are there plans to start up, for example, a Steelpan secretariat with at least one full-time or part-time staff member there?" I mean, that is just one thought, but we have to move away from pure volunteerism. And somewhere within the Ministry of Culture, we have to have, in my mind, a steel band secretariat. But that is one side of it. On the other side, you have the steel band players and movement themselves. They too have to innovate. They too have to be prepared to listen to the outside. My last experience with running Panorama, that was a thing, Jenny, I think it was 2010. We decided that you can't simply have Panorama. Just having Panorama alone is not enough to maintain the interest. So we came up with the idea of the bomb tune, which we held in Tivoli. Many people remember that. That was a huge success.
That was a good one.
And then from there, we had judging in the Panyard. And then Panorama. By the time we got to Panorama, interest had been evoked to the extent that there were 7,000 people in the stadium. That was unheard of because most Panorama these days, you have 1,000 people, you have a lot. And we had 7,000 people. I'm saying this to say that if we try different approaches, one other comment, come back to that. On Panorama Night itself, we had it produced by Ricky Keynes Douglas. So that year demonstrated to me quite clearly that if we really put our minds to it, we can change the way steel band is perceived and the way steel band developed. Coming after that, we had a plan to go back to what Jenny was just talking about, which was the Steel Band Festival. Unfortunately, the Pan Association called me a lot of names and I walked out. But that was what we had. That is what we had. We had the bomb tune starting, I think it was February, March, leading into the Panyard judging, going straight into Panorama, which was produced. And the next thing was supposed to be the festival. We need to sit and agree. It's very difficult to do, but it cannot come from, you can't sit, the panman says the government's fault. You can't just sit and just blame somebody. You have to yourself be willing to be open to the change and come up with new ideas. As it is, the movement is resilient. It has stayed alive. It has succeeded in attracting young people every year. But those young people like yourself only stayed 1 or 2 years, and they don't stay anymore. And so we have to find a way to attract them, and the steel band players and movement and leaders have to be involved in that.
Zavid Seals is saying the pan movement have been affected by pan men themselves. They don't like change because everyone is looking after their own interests.
I want to come in there. I agree with him wholeheartedly. Not that that's the only problem, but that is a significant part of the problem. I think the pan movement is its own worst enemy.
Mm,
And I know what's going to be said when I walk out of here.
that's okay.
You can't depend on somebody. You can't sit back and say, nobody likes pan. Nobody wants to do pan for the government. First, the government doesn't do this and the government do that. You yourself have to be part and parcel of the change. We had something called the Steelpan Association. And that's been around for 30 years. And I can't think of one achievement of the Steelpan Association. What has the Steelpan Association really done for Steelpan? That association, what went on inside it is greed. What went on inside it is envy, jealousy, one-manism, not thinking of Steelpan movement as a whole, and what do we as an association do for the Steelpan movement. And so that has to change, among other things.
Janine, so you bubbling. You want to come in there?
I prefer Ponty to say it.
Ponty back rather than yours.
I'm accustomed to being attacked, you see. So.
But it's quite true. And if they're being very honest, they know that they are half of the problem. You see, because you get into having a discussion with them and they start to bark at you. Because let's just go to the prize money. If you only have 5 cents, there's no way you can cut it in 2 and share it that way. What I'm saying is, this is the amount of money we have, and this is what we have to work with. So let us see if we could start that conversation here and go on. It never happens that way. And our battle most of the time for the last how many years was white in the moonlight. We were fighting for pan. My pan players were going to white in the moonlight because they play, and they catch their bus and they're going to Grenville. You see what I'm saying?
Not even waiting for results.
We have been fighting for pan, really. The point is that we never succeeded because we couldn't get the proprietors to understand. Look, you can have the show anytime and be successful. Give pan a chance. But it was
like Ali Gil was saying yesterday, why not have it in April? Why not have it in June? Why not have it in
They could have it the Saturday before.
Mm-hmm.
But why on that night? But that was we struggled with it. Every time when we got into the news, it was never about something good that they had done, but it's all about the fight with white in the moonlight. I mean, we made news most of the time because of that. And that was not necessary. And they felt that we weren't doing anything. The amount of meetings, I have to say right now, time you wasted sitting down in a lawyer's office for how many hours. But they have to realize that you have to support the people that support you. And I know that the Carnival Committee, this SMC, will do that. But they have to have the confidence. Your hands are tied when you don't have money too. So all this discussion that we have in here, you don't have money, COVID came. So
unfortunately, every discussion with the PAN movement comes down to money and prize money. And that is something that is extremely limited. Mm-hmm. And so I recognize the effort that they put into it. And we must recognize the effort. I mean, when you think about some of the people like Cess Noel, Clarkson, I have some names here: Peck Edwards, Joseph Date, Michael Roberts Blaze, Kenneth Hood. I mean, I could go on and on and on. These people have put their heart and soul, and you could understand their passion. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, they have to recognize the limitations that the Carnival Committee, well now Spicemas, has. They have to open themselves to different ideas. Most times now when you go overseas to Steelpan, they have, their show is different. It's not just a panorama anymore. They try to incorporate other things because the demographics are changing. The cultural background and environment is changing. So you cannot just limit it to what we know as panorama.
Do you know that pan is a big thing in Japan right now?
Yes.
It's like
yes,
a big deal.
We lost the boat on that one.
We have actually fallen behind. And I remember meeting after meeting with Steelpan men, and as soon as you start talking, they start to rough you up and quarrel and make noise. And that is not going to get the movement any place. And it's a shame because they themselves put so much effort and so much time into it. But they're going to get left behind. And if you look now at Carnival Monday and Tuesday, how many pans are on the road?
Maybe one.
It is dominated by the DJs. Mm-hmm. And that is part of the demographic and cultural change that is going on. So we have to say, okay, how do we deal with that? Just simply banning certain things is not the answer. We have to sit down and say, how do we get Steelpan back on the streets? I don't have any right answers, but there have people out there who have answers. If we will just have the right open type of conversation.
Brian Sylvester says an MOU which still sits at the Ministry of Culture includes much of what you said once, much of what you referred to.
Yeah,
what MOU is that?
I'm not sure about the MOU. I've never heard about it. But the point I'm making, if it is sitting there, my question back to Brian and other Steelman, what are you doing about it? Okay? You can't, what we like to do is just throw accusations. Right? And Brian has put a lot of time and effort in Steelman, and I recognize that. But you can't just throw accusations. And on the ministry side, they too. But the ministry is limited by the budget that the government allows and the money that the government has. So we have to say this is the money we have. What can we do within these limited resources? You cannot just sit back and say, you're not giving me enough money, so therefore. You know, and we have to bridge that gap. I actually sat down, I was asked by the Minister of Culture one time to try to develop a program over a number of years for Steelpan, for the development of Steelpan. And I start writing it and start talking to people. In the middle of that, I got cussed out on the radio by TV by the Steelpan men, and I dropped it. But included in that was the three things we talked about, which was the bomb tune, the judging in the Panyard, and Panorama, produced, not Panorama as we know it, by people like Ricky Charles. Then we were going to go into the back to the festival that Jenny talked about. I contacted two people in Trinidad. Mr. Mohammed, who is the manager of Exodus, one of the biggest steel bands in Trinidad. And he agreed to come to Grenada on a number of occasions free and meet with the various steel bands to talk about the management of a steel band, treating steel band as a business, etc. Secondly, I had a friend who was a big developer of organizations in Trinidad. His name is Anthony Watkins. One of the biggest developers and trainers of people, human capital. And he agreed to come to Grenada. Again, free of charge. I just had to pay their tickets, right? And the hotel fee, Jenny. Again, he was going to come and meet with steel bands to try and talk about the development of the steel band. Take Angel Harps. Development of Angel Harps as a business, as an organization. And these people were all coming. But the whole thing fell apart when I was taken apart on the TV. And so simply because the government at the time, who had promised us the money, did not give us the money. And what was unfortunate, the steel band men knew that. And they left a meeting we had saying that they understood the situation, walked straight to the TV station and attacked us in the worst way.
Wow.
Right? And one of the things they said, which I will never forget, is that there were more than 7,000 people in the Panorama that night. So what happened to the rest of the people and the money? That's an attack on my ethics, attack on my honesty. And I just walked out. And that was the end of that. I'm saying we can't behave like that.
Wow. Dr. Kellen Bob says, great to see you, Jenny. Give her my regards, a true stalwart of the culture. So we got regards. Brian also says there have been continuous efforts pre-COVID to finalize this document, but to no avail. So again, who's for?
I just want to say that approach has to stop. Yes, it hasn't worked. You can't give it up.
To continue.
You can't give it up.
What would you guys say are some of the most celebrated moments of Pan and Grenada's Carnival? Amidst all the controversy and the bickering and the back and forth, what would you say are some of the most celebrated moments for you?
Me just having them there, you know. Like the year when when we actually got to 10 bands. That was, to me, that was a big achievement.
How many it started with to begin with?
Well, in my time, I think we would have started, we had a constant like 7.
Yes.
And then we got Corinthians, St. David's had a steel band, Corinthians, and we thought we were going places. But even sometimes, I remember, I mean, Angel Harps would understand when I say this, but the year that came 7th, I thought that was a big thing. Because that was one before last. And I said to myself, I left the park maybe almost in tears, but we were able to laugh at it by the time we got to the wharf because they didn't play well, you know. And I'm saying, look at for a small band, to so many small bands to come ahead of them, that was encouraging because they said, no, they just found their Achilles heel. We can do better, you know. So there are a lot of, but my biggest moment, and this is outside of Carnival, was to see Dimensions take part in World Festival in New York. I mean, at Madison Square Garden. That was a big thing for
What
me.
year was that?
Boy, I can't even remember. But it would have been when I was when I was on the GCC. And I happened to be in New York. So I went to the actual, and they performed excellent. But that was a big moment to see Grenada being represented at that stage. But then we also had a festival here. It was a Caribbean festival. And again, Dimensions and Angels, they took part and they did fairly well. They played, to me, they were up to par with
So
the
what
other
happened
bands.
to all those things? We
You have to say like the Chinese,
Past tense.
what went wrong?
You know what was big for me, Jenny, the night that Grenville won.
Yes,
Oh.
listen.
Oh.
You know,
Listen.
I am a harps.
I was there, and that was one of my biggest.
Yeah.
Listen,
I am a harps man and I will remain a harps man. But from a
They
steel
work
band
for it.
lover perspective, when Grenville won, I thought that was such a big thing.
'cause remember
And I
I
thought it
went
was the beginning of something. Unfortunately,
Without a sponsor.
yeah,
without a sponsor.
yeah.
Because when we just started, I was there when we just started when pick squares. Squares
Squares was them.
yes, squares. And we came last. And then to here we went from last to first.
I want to ask your listeners to go on the internet and look up a tune called "Flight of the Bumblebee." It's classical, played by big orchestras.
Mhm.
Angel Harp played that one year in Queen's Park, and that it actually, just thinking about it, sent chills up and down my. There were a bunch of foreigners, tourists sitting lower down from me. It was the old pavilion, and they came because what is this steel band? You know, what is this thing? How these old steel drums could play music? And we're gonna tell you, when Angel Harp started off with "Flight of the Bumblebee," those people went berserk. They couldn't understand how we could play music of that nature and that
Japan.
quality as "Flight of the Bumblebee." And that is a big classical standard. Yeah? That was a big thing. So it was Grenville when Grenville won. It was Angel Harp with "Flight of the Bumblebee." Jenny mentioned, I didn't go to it, but I think that was really important when New Dimensions played in New York. That was very, very important. And to me also, because I was chairman of that committee, is that 2010, 2009, 2010, when we had the 7,000 people. That was a real thing for me, because the next year it was back down to 1,000.
I was just about to make that comment. Brian says that the year Panorama was produced was one of the biggest crowd, however, was never continued thereafter.
I was the chairman, and I want to remind Brian, it was the comments made by the pan men that made me walk out, and the thing went right down. I referred to it.
Okay. Brian also says, correction, Jenny, 6 out of 6. Also, so did Angel Harps in 2000, and this was in Trinidad. So, Callan says, Dr. Bob says 1994 was a big year for Comancheros as well. What happened in 94?
What did they do in 94?
Dr. Bob, what happened in 94?
Tell us.
Say it was a big deal. Nevertheless, folks, if you're just joining us, we are talking Steelpan this morning. And remember, it is part of our week of programming together with the Spicemas Corporation, celebrating their 10th anniversary. And we are speaking about the Steelpan movement involvement in Grenada's Carnival. Again, we want to say special thanks to our kind sponsors for making it possible: Western Union, Beacon Insurance, George F. Huggins and Company Limited, Arisa Credit Union, Sissons Paint. Thank you so much for being a part of this morning's conversation. Now, he says it was the first year they won Panorama, 1994 Comancheros. Y'all know your band history.
Yes.
But I'm looking back at a schedule here going back to 1969. From 1969 to 2020, there was 51 panoramas. Harps won 12, New Dimensions 8, and the tied one, and Comancheros 3, and the tied.
Oh my God.
But this comparison is a little unfair because Harps continued for a longer period.
Yeah,
But what I'm hoping to see one day, again, just like Grenville won, and the fantastic thing is that they won without a sponsor.
Without a sponsor.
There's a band I like, forgetting that I'm a Harps fan, is this band from Guelph called Panosea.
Panosea. Mm-hmm.
There's something about their music that gets to me every year, and I'm looking forward to when they win. When you think of what this young man has done in Grand Roy, I
Denver.
remember Denver and Grenada.
Environment.
I mean, you have to admire
Single-handedly.
the effort, and it's particularly so in the areas in which you do not have sponsors. And I wish the private
I
sector.
was about to ask, why is it so difficult to get?
It's a lot of money, yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, I did it for 30 years or whatever. It's a lot of money. But for instance, look at Grenville, and that steel band in Grenville hasn't had a real sponsor for Jenny. I don't know how long.
Long
time.
The only time they had Grenlec
Grenlec
Yeah.
came
was
on
with
board
them a
for a
few
while.
days.
Mhm.
And it was a
Yes.
shame that Grenlec stopped.
Mhm.
And then you have all these smaller businesses like the Indian community in Grenville. Why don't they get together? And this is not an attack on the community, and please understand that. I'm just saying you can. They're making
To
money, and
support
I'm
who
glad for them.
supports you,
I
sort
want
of.
the private sector to make money. That's not an issue for me.
Mhm.
But why don't they support something, some of our culture? They could get together, 7 of them, if they are small, and sponsor. So this is an appeal, really. I mean, I have no sway, but this is an appeal for the private sector to get more involved in the sponsorship of steel band.
I remember Squares literally dipping into his own pocket to
It happened.
provide
yes.
provide
Oh, yes.
bus
It
fare
happened
for
for
us to
them
go,
all.
or to provide
They all have done it.
refreshments
done it.
refreshments when we came to the pan house. Literally saw him taking
They all
money
have
out of
done
his pocket because his love for it was so much, and he really wanted to see, a pan out of Grenville go down to Panorama.
You remember people like John Bruno with bandits in town? I mean,
You would remember
I
that.
remember that. I
Don't
don't even
go-
know that was.
Brad Bull and Brian Robinson,
Brad started symbols. Come on.
Yeah, then there's this gentleman called Squares or Squares.
Squares.
You know,
So that would be my next question. Like some of the people who contributed to the development of Steelpan in Grenada.
Angel Hobbs would owe a lot to a guy called George Crooney.
yes,
Mhm.
yes.
He was the one that sort of took that community spirit into the pan,
Mhm.
and he did very well for quite a few years. But one of the things, we have one of the things you hear a lot of people say, we don't know the songs that they play. Well, we've
Yes.
sort of changed that because you're now being asked to play a local song.
Yeah.
And they would know the calypso that you're choosing, except when Mr. Clarkson might go somewhere else or whatever. But in those days, they went into Panorama playing classics. And when you got to, on Monday, Juve morning, they buy Granby's on Granby Street and they stop in front there and
Oh.
play the tune that they want
Yeah.
with, and everybody. But because you are a pan lover and you were always in the people's pan
know
house,
what it
you
is.
knew the tune.
Mhm.
But that was for us who would take the time and go there. But if they played a song that some elderly person was listening to on the radio and would attend Panorama, they could sing along. So that was one of the positives that came out of Carnival, that we are now using local tunes. The Calypsonians are right there with you. Something by Jambo, something by,
Mhm.
you know what I'm
Like Black Wizard and
Right.
such back in the day.
We even have people like Peck and that used to write their own compositions, but they always do the arranging.
Mhm.
But you see that little push
Mhm.
going towards the development part of the of PAN, and we can't look back. We have to look forward. I'm so concerned in a sense that I don't want to have somebody come down and come up and tell me that PAN, they had no PAN for the last 5 years. That is when I'm gone. When they meet me up there, not down there,
I know.
and tell me, we had no plan for the last 5 years. I don't want this to
Yeah.
happen. So I want them to get people involved, and they have to look at the administration part of it, because you cannot depend on government to do everything for you. They can give you a fish. They can give you the rod. They
Yeah.
will not be giving you the fish. So start looking out for yourselves. Sell it to the community. Some of them have a sort of like Angel Apps, Comancheros, maybe they mentioned River Road. Maybe they have a sort of support team there already, but there are small bands that need it, bands in Guave. And you can work from there and start looking after yourselves. Do something.
See, that was the idea in bringing people like Mohammed. Oh, the Trinidad, Jenny.
We spend a lot of money to get pan tuners here. Why, after how many years of pan, we don't have pan tuners
Nobody
here?
interested in
We have
tuning
Mr.
in.
Harris. Mr. Harris was
Yes.
from way back when. Mr. Harris left here, he went away, he came back, and he still tried. But you say what they talk about, that prophet who's have no value in his own country.
King has-
Yeah, that is us. But
Um,
every pan side is supposed to be having a tuna in their pan by now.
Dr. Bob says City New Tones, Sis and Syncopators, a lot
Yes.
of these guys
Yeah.
who founded these defunct steel bands are also legends.
Good.
And says there are some young bright spots like Cordell Byam
That's right.
with his band Dimensions who have potential.
That's a fantastic young man, and I wish him the best. But this, why doesn't the Steelpan Association, the Steelpan movement themselves recognize these people?
Have a show.
They will say that the government doesn't do it or the ministry doesn't do it. Why don't they do it? There are people who gave their life to Steelpan. Why doesn't the Steelpan movement have a big show, as Jenny said? Recognize Harris and all these people. You know, I think what I'm getting at is that it has to come from inside, from you. And sitting and blaming other people is not going to take you anywhere. Despite the fact that there are challenges and some of the other people involved have not done their part, but you cannot let that dominate your thoughts or your speaking or your attempts.
They have made one little change. I noticed that they have brought in the two principals, well, Mr. Ashby and Mr. Jeremiah. I am thinking that they're afraid of them because when they went to school, maybe so they may have some sort of sway. But I'm glad to see them there because, again, we know what Mr. Ashby could give, and Mr. Jeremiah is not far behind. So with them and a few other people to support them, the PAN movement, don't lose this opportunity. Do not lose it. Work with these guys. I think they're afraid to curse them, so that's a plus. They're not going to curse them ahead like how they would do Ponty. And my gray hair helped because they never really cursed me in the face. Ponty didn't have a girl. He had no hair at the time, but it was, and they have to. You see, they have Mr. Jeremiah, Mr. Ashby there. Use them, get some more people involved because they would not know much about the PAN itself. But take these outsiders who support you and get them to help you to move along. We can still make a show for December. It's not too late. We'll play a short song, one verse, and we can still put on something in December. COVID will be a lot less and a lot more people might be vaccinated. Am I lying?
No, you're not. Let's create some sort of incentives. But we're getting ready to go. But before we do, I just want to get your thoughts on, as we're celebrating, 10th anniversary of the Spicemas Corporation. What can you highlight as strength of the overall Spicemas brand?
Mr. Jacobs, in the sense that I feel for you. Mr. Jacobs, I know you mean well.
The overall strength.
Mr. Jacobs, he's there. And you just have to get that good team around you. Because I was one of the fortunate ones. I always had good people. We just never had any money. But we always had good people working with me. My board under SMC was the best. Colin, Ali Gill, Renisha, Alexander.
Yes, that was a team.
They were excellent. Then you go back a bit and you have Mrs. Gary, you have Liz Henry,
the love,
Jasper Price, Tommy Matthew. These people, it was like
no start on Mr. Matthew.
Then you started knowing that there's no I in team. That was appreciated then. And this is what Mr. Jacobs needs because he has the passion. He looks quiet. I don't want to take advantage of him, but at the same time, lean on him because I think with the support, he'll get where he wants to go. That is the plus right now.
Ponty?
Yeah, before I answer, I just want to what do young people say? Big up?
Yeah.
A gentleman who gave a lot to Carnival, and actually the year he chaired it, we took over Carnival with a overdraft of $100,000 and actually reduced it down to $10,000. And that was Hugh Dolan. And that showed me what was possible. He was the chairman at the time. But for me, the strength, one of the strengths of Spicemas is the very brand Spicemas, the name Spicemas. Anywhere you go in North America and you say Spicemas, people know what it is. A lot of it has to do with the jab. And that brand, and I know people were upset when you say 1,000 jabs, but I think they were being very, very limited in their thinking. The brand Spicemas means something in the Caribbean. Jab, the name means something in
synonymous with Grenada,
the Caribbean.
Spice.
And coming followed closely on that is our Calypsonians, our performance. I think we have a brand that we need to find a way to build on because it's known. Our Calypsonians, our jab, and the name Spicemas is out there, known, and people look forward to it. We have to find a way to build and take advantage of it and build on that.
And the guild says we need a $2 million pump into Carnival, like hard cash. And
that might very well be true.
Ask me if it's Chinese or US.
That might very well be true.
He says we need, because he says the amount that we make out of it, we need to inject more into it to make even more.
and that's an important thing. And no, we finish. It's an important thing. What is generated by Carnival, and I don't think people talk enough about that. $30 million or whatever it is, 35 million, but it's spread all around. So therefore, government should be prepared, in my mind, to put $2 million into it. But you see, the most of the money doesn't come back to government per se right away. So it looks a little strange from a government perspective to be putting out $2 million. But that money circulates, that 30 million
economy.
in small people, big people, everybody get a share.
Taxi
And
drivers,
it has to be looked at. It
salons.
has to be looked at that way.
Definitely so. Brian says Mr. Jacobs have been given a bowl of soup but a fork to drink.
A fork to drink it with.
Oh my gosh. Well, we do wish him all the best still, and of course he needs the support because in 2022, according to the chairman and the CEO yesterday, it's Grenada Carnival will be off with a bang. So we're looking forward to that big bang in 2022. With having no carnival for 2 years.
There's one little thing I would like to add though, Aruna, that the government must support and leave the politics out of the mass. Support the people that are trying to bring this thing, into make it come forward. Support them and stop playing politics with the culture. It's very important. I mean, as I say, I was sheltered, but we had a bit of it quite a few times. But they have to start looking at it as a product of theirs and not start putting colors on its back, the greens and the yellows. Look at it as a product that you can be proud of and just support them. And it's very important, all your audits and all of that, because you have to tell them how you spend their money. That is important. But please support the SMC. They need your help. They're not going to go and they're not taking a placard and go on the street, but they still need your support, and just support them because eventually it is your product. It's Grenada, and it is your product, whoever is in government at the time.
Totally agree. Final word, Ponty?
Well, I think government is I mean, Jenny is clear what you said about the government, but I really would like to see that injection of capital, injection of money into Carnival, despite our budgetary constraints. And being the kind of business I was in, I'm very conscious of the limitations of government and the money that they have to spend. But the returns are so direct and so diffuse and spread through the entire country that I think it's well worth the money.
Totally agree. Thank you so very much. I really enjoyed this morning's conversation, and looking forward to having another one. So on behalf of the Spicemas Corporation and their 10th anniversary, thank you so much for bringing a bit of pan into the conversation, the Steelpan movement involvement in Grenada's Carnival. Thank you so very much, guys. Appreciate your whole lot.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And that takes care of our program this morning. And of course, we will be back tomorrow for another one. Remember, for the entire week, we'll be talking all things Carnival as we continue to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the Spicemas Corporation. So looking forward to having you back in the ladies' room tomorrow for another discussion. Alrighty. So catch us again then. Thank you so very much, everyone, for tuning in and sharing your and adding to the conversation. Appreciate you. Looking forward to having you back tomorrow, same time, same place.